All right, today we are going to discuss chapter 2 in your text. We are talking about Spaniards in a far northern frontera, 1721 to 1821. Several factors motivated frontier people to settle in New Spain's far north. The Spanish crown wanted to grow their empire and create a buffer against French and British encroachment. Frontier peoples sought an escape from their life in Spain, which exhibited many push factors, including unemployment, natural disasters, excessive taxation, and ethnic prejudice. The pull factors offered in New Spain included the ability to acquire land and improved economic status. However, once the settlers arrived, there were often many problems. First, even to begin the journey, they had fear of relocating to this area that was relatively uninhabited, and it was very far from home. They settled parts of New Spain. They also really faced a labor shortage. People had to work incredibly hard on the frontier to survive. There was a lack of regional infrastructure and isolation. They also faced significant resistance of the Native American people. Many of the Native American tribes were hostile to the new people coming to their land. By 1800, Spanish Texas remains the least inhabited part of New Spain for the reasons listed above. The frontier setting shaped the institutional framework of Spanish Texas. Although Spain succeeded in thwarting French encroachments on the outer reaches of New Spain, Texas was not an inviting living place. While Native Americans welcomed trade opportunities, they resisted settlers' incursions, and settlers perceived Indians as a constant threat. The frontier institution of the mission firmly established Catholicism in Texas and led to the development of San Antonio, Goliad, and Nacogdoches. Some of the responsibilities of the mission were to provide a Christianizing force for Native people, to help guard the frontier, and of course to minister to families, soldiers, and government officials. Presidios served to entice civilians into remote areas by providing some semblance of protection in the areas surrounding these forts. The responsibilities of the presidios included defense. They served as trading centers. They attracted the pioneers who were seeking security, and they assisted in the missionization process, disciplining Native Americans, helping to maintain the mission's Native American labor force. They also had social and economic impact on the region because they provided work and a place to exchange goods. The ranching frontier and accompanying cattle trade provided Texas a mythical character. While Spain's rule over Texas left a lasting imprint throughout South Texas and the plains west of San Antonio to the Guadalupe River, an area that one scholar referred to as the cradle of Texas ranching, livestock markets extended into neighboring provinces of Nuevo Leon and Coahuila, and lucrative commercial associations were established, as well with markets in Louisiana. While farmers relied on ranching and commerce and livestock to support themselves and their families, the waters of the San Antonio River and the San Pedro Creek provided some agricultural success. Towns were scarce in the 18th century Texas, although they provided much safer than rural areas, as townfolk were better able to fend off Indian attacks. However, lack of proper sewage facilities and the widespread practice of leaving rotting animal waste and carcasses in the open often led to the spread of disease in the early towns. Finally, the town setting also fostered the presence of vagrants, prostitutes, and other social nonconformists. So definitely living in an 18th century Texas town was a dubious enterprise at best. A frontier society was created as cultural traditions brought from the interior of New Spain were modified, and by the early 19th century, all of the urban settlements had established rudimentary educational facilities. Frontier society had a range of ethnic identities. Of course, social differences still remained. Um, Most Africans had not arrived in Texas as slaves. These free persons of color worked alongside other laborers, many integrating themselves into colonial society, adopting Spanish surnames and learning the Spanish language. Although the Crown extended its official policy on slavery to the far north, imposing regulations on Africans lest they revolt, because of the dire need for laborers, colonials did not enforce such regulations. Slavery in colonial Texas remains a topic for additional study, which some of you might be interested in pursuing. The rigors of frontier life softened gender discrimination as they did that of race. Women fought alongside their men and helped with ranch and farm chores. Isolation posed a severe problem for women, but overall, um, Texans enjoyed certain rights. Texas women enjoyed certain rights under Spanish law, knowing full well that they could use the judicial system for their protection, both economic and physical. The number of Native Americans living in Texas during the colonial era is difficult to determine. A census in the late 1770s estimated in excess of 7,000. Many of the indigenous peoples, such as the Coatecans, moved to missions and accepted Catholicism as a means of survival. Coatecans adopted new attitudes towards work and other European traits. Assimilation, combined with displacement, wars with other native groups, and diseases, led to the end of the Coatecans as a distinct people. Colonization weakened the Karankawas as well as made them susceptible to Comanche warfare and cultural assimilation. Other indigenous groups suffered due to warfare and disease. Overall, white settlers and official Spanish policy represented a serious threat to traditional native lifestyles, and ignorance of Indian sensitivities and culture exacerbated the situation. In addition, large numbers of native people actively resisted missionization. Apaches and Comanches definitely resisted white interlopers. Comanches stole livestock, horses, weapons, tools, and supplies for survival and continuously waged war against these settlers. Plains Indians relied on women to achieve peace with the Spaniards. Comanches and other bands used captive Mexican women as hostages to extract supplies and truces. Dramatic change in Spain's monarchical system initiated a corresponding effort to reform colonial endeavors. Administrative and tax reform were initiated, and free trade was established in 1778. The Marquis de Roubaix was dispatched to report on the frontier defense, and his recommendations led to relocation of East Texas missions and presidios to San Antonio. The new policy increased rather than pacified relations among Indian groups and lost aid as settlers. Pobladores put more emphasis on their day-to-day necessities than on observing or implementing imperial mandates. Indeed, these pobladores had long resented imperial intrusion, and with the implementation of Bourbon reform, such resentment and discontent only increased. Towards the end of the Spanish era, the government decided to secularize the missions. By this point, however, few Native Americans had been Christianized or Hispanicized. One group, the Catos, managed to remain in their homeland until the mid-19th century, and the hostile Indios Barbaros continued to wreak havoc. The presidio system failed in its primary task because of Indian attack and poor administration. However, by the time the three major settlements were firmly in place, San Antonio, now the provincial capital, Goliad and Nacogdoches, trade was brisk, but international trade was illegal. The drive for Mexican independence from Spain began in the aftermath of Napoleon's conquest of Spain in 1808. Ripple effects were felt in far-off Texas with the De las Casas revolt of 1811 and the Gutierrez Maggi expedition of 1813. Isolation had always provided a sense of independence and self-reliance. Tejanos were developing their own distinct character as a people of the frontier. Even today, Mexico recognizes a distinctive to the Nortino variety of Mexican culture, and Tejanos continue to pursue local political solutions rather than seeking union with a far-off state or national entity. Spain never made a convincing case to encourage many people to relocate in the far north. While few Tejanos mourned the end of the 300-year Spanish rule in 1821, it is evident that Spain's legacy was positive. Texas still practices Spanish traditions, such as the community property laws and those protecting debtors. Spanish cultural influence in language, geographical nomenclature, cuisine, architecture remain a vital part of Texas identity.